Cryptocurrency ASICs 2.0, the next wave by EPICBolckchain Tech.
Hi, I'm Quan from EPICBolckchain. Slight change in the agenda because the presentation at the end of the day talks about the future in blockchain. So I'm here to talk about myths in the blockchain world. EPIC is a startup for blockchain ASICs. We're an experienced team that designed lots of products that you're using but don't know who we are. We've designed 10 generations of GPUs, which essentially is 1/3 of the graphics in all PCs. We have done 6 generations of game consoles, which represents 80% of all the game consoles in the world. And we've done 4 generations of SoCs, or about 1/3 of all the phones in the world. And we've shipped over 1 billion semiconductors a year. So our team has a lot of experience doing semiconductors, probably far more than most startups. As you may know, ATI technology was sold for $5 billion to AMD, and a lot of people left AMD. I brought a lot of team back together to work at EPIC. So semiconductors are hard. Don't let anyone tell you that it's not. A lot of people here are allured by the gold rush mentality. We've seen hundreds of companies get started in the blockchain world in rigs and semiconductors. We've seen thousands of projects fail, and we've seen hundreds of millions of dollars lost in hardware development. There's a fallacy that money can buy everything, and you look at companies like even GMO, a large Japanese conglomerate. They've lost $300 million trying to do ASICs. So you may know that they discontinued their 7-nanometer products and stopped all blockchain development as of the end of 2018. So there's a fallacy that ASICs are easy, and I'm here to dispel that myth. You can't just throw money at the problem and expect to succeed. We've seen companies hire consultants or contractors say, I can get into the business. And we're all attracted by the gold rush mentality. You can't cut corners and say, I'm going to get into production quickly, and ignore best practices because you're rushing to get to market to make that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And most of all, you can't have a 2-person company in your basement, try and sell rigs to the general public. We see that happen all the time. You see people saying, I'm going to run a pre-sale, I'm going to run a Decred rig, and I'm going to make a lot of money. Well, guess what? It doesn't happen that way. We've seen open source ASICs. How can you design an ASIC in your basement? That's what we see on the internet. I've only seen one example of open source ASICs succeed. That's Sun Microsystems and University of Berkeley. So if you look at what's needed to develop ASICs, your typical startup doesn't have any of the relationships. They don't have the tools. I see people on the internet all the time saying, I'm going to design an ASIC. And, they publish a paper, but you know what? That design hasn't been proven. They haven't got experience dealing with TSMC and 7-nanometer. So those all come from having money, having relationships, having the right team and the right thought process. It's like being sick. When you're sick, you don't look on the internet and say, I got a heart problem, and start to operate on yourself. That's what the open source community is trying to do to fix cryptocurrency ASICs. So why else is hardware hard? It's hard relative to software. The problem with the community is that most people in the community are software people. So you take a very software-centric point of view, right? You release, you iterate on the fly. In hardware, once the product's out there, you can't fix it. So fundamentally, you're taking a 4-year life cycle and squishing it down to 1 year of development. You want to get things right the first time. So we spend a lot of our time in engineering, and we spend lots of dollars in inventory and in NRE. Semiconductor masks can take $5 to $10 million of development. So if you make a mistake in semiconductors, if you're doing a 7-nanometer product, it's going to cost you $15 million of mistakes. A lot of startups can afford to make that kind of mistake. So let's look at the trade-offs in terms of designing ASIC. You can choose between, you can typically pick power, area, which is cost, and performance. So, in mobile, you would typically take area, small area for size, and then basically low power. In cryptocurrencies, you typically want performance and power. This is not a game of tic-tac-toe. You have to only pick 2. 3 is a loser. If you try and go for all 3, your semiconductor will not work. So 2 basic types of ASICs. There are analog ASICs and there are digital ASICs. So fundamentally, most ASICs you see today are analog products. They're little tiny chips, basically, about a quarter size of your fingernail, and they're what we call black magic. There's typically one circuit, you repeat the circuit multiple times. You typically do a lot of handcrafting. That's why it takes time. It's a different type of design than a digital ASIC, which is very complex. So if you want a comparison, typically a GPU is a complex ASIC. So, I come from a background of digital mostly, so we spend a lot of time trying to perfect the circuitry and trying to make the product more advanced. So, the beauty behind a digital ASIC is you can move from generation to generation. So, examples are Bitcoin Decred are analog ASICs, Grin, Zcash and Ethereum are the other type, digital ASICs. So we always have a joke, and everyone always wants to go to the most advanced technology, and in the semiconductor world, being too early is bad. Unless you're going to make that investment to get it, to invest over time and have multiple generations 7, it will bankrupt companies. We were offered to work with companies that were 7, basically somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 to $60 million to work on a 7-nanometer ASIC. We said no, it didn't work, so fundamentally, we decided not to do it. The risk is too high. Big ASICs, hard to do. That's what ATI did well. These ASICs typically are 40 times the size of a smaller ASIC. I'll skip.
Sorry about that, guys.
I'm doing terrible.
It's okay.
How do I move this? So I'll hold it.
It's okay.
Okay. So in the semiconductor world, you want to do things before you release the product. So you want to iterate. In the design, when you go to consultant, you typically get what you pay for. 1 month's worth of work, they release. In a semiconductor, you typically want to iterate and get it right in software before you release to hardware. So let me finish off by saying ASICs are hard. It's not impossible if you do it right. Fundamentally, you need an experienced team to deliver. So look for us in 2020. We've got 2 rigs coming out. We'll be your partner for the most profitable rigs. Think of EPIC ASICs for epic returns. You'll be laughing all the way to the bank with us.